I was born in 1942 and sort of became aware that when I was about 1956, I suppose it was, 13, 14, that I liked other boys in my class when other boys in my class seemed to like getting interested in girls. And I didn't understand, because I'd never heard the word homosexual. I mean, maybe people don't realise how Puritan those times were after the Second World War. And in fact, it's known that it was far more discriminatory and forbidden, really, than in, say, the 30s. Why? Because so many men, of course, had been killed in the Second World War and the business of repopulating the country, etc. And it was considered, you know, the lowest and most disgraceful and contemptible feeling to have. But anyway, I knew these feelings, and then I did come across this word. And I thought, that's what I am. And the number of derogatory terms, well, you probably know there were many. So I grew up terribly inhibited. My father, and I want to say straight away that when he eventually discovered that as I came out as queer, was extremely good to me. I used to pray, please God, make me normal time after. Well, of course, he never did. And I'm not going to go into this too far, as you will understand. I'm afraid I suffered the most appalling assault that I'm afraid traumatised me, but it was a terrible, terrible thing.
So when did you first get to know other queer people on the island?
Around about 1963. Not many, and it was still terribly inhibited. I mean, I'm a native, as I say, and I like it here, so why shouldn't I? But, it wasn't terribly good for any sort of sexual experience or, shall we say, self-acceptance. I did get married. To a girl, I mean, and she knew I was queer and she thought she could convert me. Much she knew. But I think the truth is we really did love each other, but we couldn't get on sexually. Right. But you see, what happened was that there was an early island gay group. Now, it was a secret sort of thing, really, but I was the Isle of Wight telephone contact for Gay Times, you see. And so people would ring up from time to time. I could tell them very often what facilities were there on the island for gay people. Well, that didn't take long, none. And people pouring out their heart, which I could well appreciate.
Sure.
And so that's actually how I met James, in fact. He phoned up, as people did. Fairly quickly, really, we realised that, it was us against the world, I suppose, in a bit of a way.
So how quickly was it that your relationship developed after that?
A few hours.
Was it a while before you started living together?
It was only a few months, I think.
Okay.
Yes. Of course, that was in 1987. And of course, when civil partnerships come up in 2006, we formalised it. But,
So and what work were you doing in the 80s when you met James?
Oh, well, I was teaching then, yes. Okay.
What got you into that profession?
I know it sounds funny to say this, but I'd wandered. I mean, you can imagine I had a rather disrupted life, like younger life. But I went to Russia, you see, one of these in-tourist things, and there was a little group of us going around, Moscow, Leningrad, Soviet Georgia, as it then was, and there was a couple on the thing with their young son, and he started to ask things, and I started to explain things to him. What's this mean, what's that? And his mother said, I think you'd make a good teacher. And I thought, oh, yes, I would, because I was a real drifter at that time. And so, bit by bit, I sort of applied for teacher training. And then after that, because I'd skipped out of school before A-levels, I thought if I went to university, people would discover I was gay. Had I gone to university then, been the best thing for me, of course. But anyway, I then went on to do a degree at Southampton and got my job at Cowes High School, basically, as it was then. It doesn't exist any longer. Of course, that had its own problems because Then, of course, I was divorced and I didn't have an obvious girlfriend. And you know what teenagers are like. Sixth formers were great, of course. They used to come and visit James and I sometimes. But in the end, I thought, oh, I can't go on with this too. It was Section 28 time, you know, I don't know.
How that played out in real terms for you as a teacher?
Not too badly
Yeah.
externally, but internally, there was this fear. When Section 28 first came out, we all had to go into working parties in school, all the staff, I mean. But anyway, I then came out during the session thinking, oh, hell, if I get the sack, because I could have done. At that time, I think until 2003 it was, that you could have been sacked for being gay. Wrote to the headmistress, and she said, the letter, I am and I will resign. Anyway, she called me in, of course, and she said, tear that letter up and put it in the waste paper basket. And it revealed that she too was gay.
Ah.
So it was a bit of luck. Because you see, I also became a councillor, local councillor. I became the mayor and everything else. Of course, there were things I got anonymous letters about. We don't want a puff for mayor and all things like that. I was on, I won five elections and then I decided to retire. I know, but I've always been interested in politics, I must say.
Can you tell us about the first time you went to Pride in London?
Well, you see, the group on the island, this all came about through C&D, funnily enough. My first boyfriend really was Gavin. I hired minibuses and went up there, you know, and then didn't do the full Aldermaston to London march, because it was those days rather than much later.
Yeah, there was much more of a feeling of it being a political event in those days rather than it being a celebration.
It certainly was, yeah. So I'm 82 now, which is not terribly old, but I mean, you know, I can't have many more years left. Thank God. I haven't been too stupid, have I?
Absolutely not.
But I mean, the thing is, when you look back on it, life's comedy, etc. Because you know, I've always thought, for instance, sorry, here comes the English teacher. I've always thought Shakespeare's best comedies are more profound than his great tragedies. But I do think comedy tells more about life, maybe, than tragedy, because tragedy is heightened and self-heroic, whereas comedy is everyday's life and the pratfalls that you make. Anyway, enough of that. I'm not back in teaching any longer, so I shall shut up.
Okay.
This is sort of a more light-hearted one. Years ago, I was friendly with a vicar. I don't mean I had an affair with him, but I was friendly with a gay vicar, etc. And apparently, various places where the Anglican Church, has outposts, so the clergy have to have locums for their holidays, and Michael got Monte Carlo, would you believe? So he invited about 12 of us to this vast vicarage in Monte Carlo. Well, unfortunately, it was great. I thought Monte Carlo was a bit boring, actually, but there was a certain Louis there who took my eye, and I'm afraid to say, with no success, but this is called Jellyfish, because it sort of summed it up. Oh, Louis, Louis, look at me, you lie so close yet remote. You see, I'm free and so are you, but jellyfish are afloat and swim in the warm sea. They smell of salt, they look like rubber, and I could never lure a lover while they trail their stings, disgusting things, like feather boas below us. I had planned to brush your hand as together we dived through spume, but it's not to be, at least for me, for you refuse to splash about, and coast guards in that moment shout, Gardez-vous, méduse, and jellyfish clog up the sea. We lodge on separate landings in a house from La Belle Époque, with portraits of English ladies swathed in fur and feather, though in such sultry weather you think like us they would flop. So all through hot nights, Louis, though you lie just meters away, I toss on my bed with a buzzing love, await my fate should you lift the latch. But I know that we never will quite match. I will never feel your tender reach, for it seems it did on the beach, that jellyfish fill up the sea between you and me. Oh, Louis, why won't you love me? as jellyfish swarm in the sea.